the work-family blend. We're always trying to come up with new euphemisms for, I think it's a euphemism for insanity. Like, can we call it balance? Can we call it having it all? Can we call it a blend? But we're going to talk a little bit about the different blends we have between work and family. And it really is true that everybody is different. And your personality has a lot of effect on this. And there's a professor at Wharton who's actually studying this among men and women, like how people blend things. And I am the type, she has a fancy name for it, I'm the type that likes to integrate, which is why I work in my kitchen. Sometimes when my kids are there, sometimes when they're at school, but I can multitask like anybody's business. And it's the way I want to do it. Like, I want to be getting them a glass of milk while I'm writing a blog entry. But there are other people who have to have things really different, really totally separate. They're the type of people who love their kids but have no pictures of kids on their desk at work because they want to have it totally separate. So tell us, what are your different blends? And how did you negotiate for them with your spouse or yourself or your kids or your child care provider? Suffice it to say, our lives are very different now than before we had kids. But what kind of blend do you have and why does it work? Do you want to take a stab at it, Lynn?
Well, for me, it's changed over time, and it's gotten a lot better. When I had my first child, I had to go back to work because my husband had a new business, and so I was working in an office. I was working part-time, full-time, and I was not happy in that situation. But eventually, when I had my second child, I was at a company that I'd been with for a while. I negotiated a 10-month maternity leave, and when I came back, I asked them if I could work at home. And we actually built an office that's separated. It's in the attic of our house, and basically, I go to work every day in this place that's in my house, but removed from my household. And it's just such a perfect place for me to work that one of the things that I realized to make it work is I really had to be the kind of person that can be trusted to be in your house and actually work. Because, there's so many temptations in your house, and I think you have to ask yourself, can I really make that work? And for me, I'm very good at compartmentalizing and separating my work from my home. And the other reason it works for me is I have a desk in my office, and every day when my son comes home from school, he sits down and he works at his desk next to me. And he does his homework, and he knows that I'm doing my work. So it's not just a workspace for me, it's a workspace for him too, and it works beautifully for us.
It's such a nice image. Laura, you had talked a little bit about the fact that part-time didn't work for you. So what kind of person are you? How does that play into it?
Well, yeah, I'm the multitasker person, and it's one of the reasons I don't work well from home. I did occasionally try to work from home, but I didn't have a space set aside, and I couldn't sit at the kitchen table because there was always the dishes or the dog or something that needed to be done. But at one point when my children were 11, 14, and 16, I decided they're teenagers. I need to be at home more. I need to try this. And my job wasn't where I wanted it to be anyway, so I quit my job and decided I'm going to be a full-time mom. And I lasted 6 weeks. Because I realized I am that multitasker, and I needed to have my day job I could think about, and then my night job, which I enjoy just as much. I like my day job, but I like my night job too. And I just was much more effective in everything, in what the events that the kids were involved in. I balanced it all much better being busier than when I had time off to really focus on it. I just wasn't as effective. So.
I think I actually have to echo that. I'm a multitasker too, and I think if you ask anyone in my family, I've always been that way. I think if I stayed at home with my kids, I would drive my kids crazy. I think if I didn't have kids and I was just all the work, I know that I drove the people that I worked with crazy, because after I had my first child and realized I can't get absolutely everything done exactly how I want it all the time, you start to let go and you start to get a little bit more perspective. And when things are really frustrating at work, you know that you can come home and just focus on home and just leave that behind. And when, you know, you're not as appreciated as you'd like to be at home, which I know doesn't happen to anybody, you go to work where someone says, thanks, that was really helpful, or hey, that's a great idea, or wow, you got that done so quickly, you know. And so I find that the balance is really good, and I think that my perspective and appreciation of each exists because I have both.